Now I'm going to start over again. Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Daryl O'Sullivan, and welcome to this month's Western Neuropathy Association webinar. I'll make a little bit of instructions on how we're going to do this. The webinar will be anywhere from a half an hour to 40 minutes or 45 for time for questions. The questions should be held to the end. You can put them in the question and answer, which is what we prefer, but you also can put them in the chat. At the end, then we will go through each of the questions and do our best to ask Mr. Kim to answer the questions as best he can. We will be recording this for use through our website in terms of the YouTube channel. So you can, if you have friends who are wanting to see this and haven't got a chance, that'll be the opportunity. And it should be up in about a week or so. So without any further ado, let me introduce our guest speaker. Mr. Stanley Kim is the CEO and co-founder of WinSanTor. He is an entrepreneur with a background in founding companies across various industries, including pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, medical devices, and software. Mr. Kim graduated from the University of California, Berkeley, where he studied genetics. He realized he had no desire to work in a laboratory or attend medical school, so he pursued a career in law, becoming an intellectual property attorney. He eventually served as the director of intellectual property at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies. WinSanTor is a clinical stage biotechnology company dedicated to discovering and developing treatments for peripheral neuropathies, such as diabetic neuropathy, chemotherapy-induced neuropathy, and HIV-related neuropathy. The company is conducting phase 3 clinical trials for its lead drug aimed at preventing and reversing nerve damage associated with these conditions. So any further ado, I will turn over the screen and the webinar to Mr. Kim. It's all yours.
Thank you, Daryl. So are people on the phone right now, or?
Yeah, we
Okay,
should
great.
we have about 55.
So they're all seeing me, so I can't see them then, I
Right.
guess.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'll probably ask questions. Well, I'll probably have questions toward the end, or they can actually ask questions during the actual presentation itself. Hi, my name is Stanley Kim. I am the CEO of WinSanTor, and that was pronounced very correctly, WinSanTor. And it's actually based on where the founders of the company are: Winnipeg, San Diego, Toronto. And so our origins of the company are very much Canadian. So two-thirds of our founders are, actually half of our founders are from Canada itself. And the technologies also come from Canada as well too. There's our Canadian tie. So let me introduce myself. Again, thank you, Daryl, for presenting me. My name is Stanley Kim. I'm CEO of WinSanTor. I've been very, very fortunate to work with some amazing people, started several companies. We have technology. I developed technologies with my co-founders that are pretty much on every single cell phone. They were acquired by Qualcomm and Apple. So again, I've been working with some amazing scientists, and WinSanTor is no different. In fact, actually, I think WinSanTor is probably the epitome, or the zenith, or the highest point of my career, working with some amazing scientists. And we think what we have is something that may not only prevent neuropathy, but also prevent neuropathy. It seems to be regenerating the nerves. And I believe we're the first company regenerating peripheral nerves. And so let me go ahead and start with the presentation, if that's okay with everyone. And if you have any questions, please ask. I'll try and answer as we go along, or probably afterwards. And so let me share the screen. So WinSanTor is actually a biotech company based in San Diego, California, and it was really started more as a company, not as a traditional company. It was really started more to solve this problem. It was the leading scientists that were brought together to solve this problem, and I'll kind of explain that in a second. And so, if you know anything about peripheral neuropathy, so let me go ahead and just start with the words peripheral neuropathy. And so the brain system, the nervous system, is made up of two different systems, and one is the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord. And then everything that connects to the brain and the spinal cord is called the peripheral nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system is what connects your nerves, similar to an iPhone cord, like an iPhone cord like this. It connects to your brain. Think of an iPhone cord like this. It connects to your brain, your spinal cord, to all your organs. the heart, the lungs, the eyes, the ears, the muscles, and to the skin. And so that is your peripheral nervous system. And it's very similar to an iPhone cord. Like, it's plugged, again, it plugs in, it's exposed. Oops, if you can see that or not. I'll try and see if I can do that. And then it's exposed on the other end into the organ itself. And so peripheral neuropathy is peripheral neuropathy. And so pathy means disease or illness. And so if you break down the word, peripheral nerve system, peripheral nerve disease or illness, that is what peripheral neuropathy is. It is actually a degenerative disease that affects many, many people. And it actually occurs for lots of different reasons. And so we'll talk about it in a second. And so there's several hundred million people with peripheral neuropathy. And so they say approximately 8% of the total population has neuropathy. So if you look at the total world, you're talking about several hundred million people with peripheral nerve damage. And it's actually it's actually affects more people than all the other neurodegenerative diseases combined. So if you add Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, all the other diseases, dementia, peripheral neuropathy affects more people than that. And so it's a fairly prevalent disease. And it's one of these things where a lot of people don't talk about and know about. And I'm sure a lot of the people that are on the call today, they've experienced that. They've talked to their doctors, and the doctor goes, "I have no clue what you're talking about." And that's a shame because again, it affects so many different people. And so if you actually look again, as I mentioned to you, it's actually peripheral nerve damage or disease, and it affects people in different ways. And there's a lot of different causes. And so it's caused by, for example, diabetes or chemo or HIV or even aging. A lot of people, as they get older, they lose the nervous system and surgeries, infectious diseases. For a lot of people, they don't even know what the cause is. It's called idiopathic neuropathy. And I'm sure a lot of you guys know this. And it's a hidden disease and it affects so many people in so many different ways. And so people talk about pins and needles, they talk about the burning sensation, tingling. There's so many things that are described about peripheral neuropathy, and different people are affected by different ways. And this is important because this is one of the calls to actions that I'm going to have for you guys because so many people have so many different symptoms. We as a company want to know what causes what. And so diabetes, what we're seeing is diabetes has a tendency to cause this, and chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy has a tendency to cause this. And so those are different kinds of symptoms that people are being affected by. But biologically speaking, it's actually fairly simple. It actually is nerve damage. And so this is the skin of a person. And so a normal person would actually have all these, again, if you look at the iPhone cord, it branches out, it's exposed, and it branches out to 1,000 different uh, axon terminals. And those axon terminals connect the brain to your body and allow the body to function. But for some whatever reason, when people have peripheral neuropathy, they die. Those nerves, they just degenerate and they get worse and worse and worse. And so if you think of it as weeds or kind of tendrils, they just kind of slowly regress and they slowly die. They don't explode. They just slowly die. And again, it's affected by different things. It could be diabetes, for example. It could be also by inflammatory diseases and lots of different reasons. And so, and it's really interesting. We think and we'll explain why we think it's happening in for differently, as a company. And so, as you all know, there's really no treatments for the actual underlying disease. There's actually only pain drugs, and pain drugs only mask the sensation. They really do nothing for the nerve damage. And so, the only thing that you can do is you can change your lifestyle. You can change, for example, with chemotherapy, you can reduce the chemotherapy. You can try and reduce the underlying cause if you know the underlying cause, and that may slow the progression down, but generally speaking, it is irreversible, and this is a shame. And for many people, as I showed you over here, pain is one subset of the different symptoms. So pain drugs, as I said, that's the only treatment, only works for about 20% of the population. There's really nothing for the underlying nerve damage itself. And for people that are what's called idiopathic, as I mentioned to you, people that have unknown causes, there's nothing for. And so we get a lot of calls from people that are idiopathic because with other diseases or other complications or other causes, diabetes, you can stop the diabetes, or treat the diabetes, you can stop the chemotherapy, you can try and do something for the other thing. But what's unknown, there's really nothing you can do. And that's actually one of the reasons we think we are getting so many calls from people that are idiopathic. And so this disease, as I mentioned to you, it is neurodegenerative, it is debilitating. But what people don't know is, there's so much focus on cancer, and actually, in my industry, I'm in the pharmaceutical industry, not by choice, but actually by default. Um, everyone focused on cancer. 70% of all transactions are in cancer. And if you look at where the money goes, it's towards cancer. But the unfortunate part is, and this you can see, the cost to cancer compared to the cost to diabetes, just diabetes alone, is is a fraction. And the mortality rate of people with diabetes compared to diabetes deaths, mortalities compared to cancer is as on par, if not greater. So this is all cancers. And yes, lung cancer is higher, but breast cancer is smaller. And so mortality rate is extremely high amongst people that have complications of these different diseases, neuropathy. And so it's unfortunate because Big Pharma, for whatever reason, has not focused on peripheral neuropathy. And I think a lot of you guys know this, is that peripheral neuropathy is not a well-recognized disease. People don't focus on peripheral neuropathy. It's too big, it's too complex, it has too many two reasons. Uh, but there are no companies focused on peripheral neuropathy other than through pain. So you know that recently Vertex just approved a drug for pain, which is I'm not gonna. It was horrible. The data was not good. It was on par with placebo. So I'm gonna throw it out there. But the unfortunate part, this is kind of where the focus of pharma is today, and there's really nothing for peripheral neuropathy as a disease. And that means that since there's no big acquirers, again, if you spend, they say about $2.2 billion to develop a drug now. And so if you're brand new, if you want to raise money around this, which is what we've been trying to do, it's really difficult because there's no big pharma in the space looking to acquire you, and there's no one that's ever done this before. So if you're going to risk $2.2 billion, it's not going to be on something like us because we're too new, we're too novel, this disease is too novel, there's no one on the space, dot, dot, dot. There's a lot of different reasons. And so what ended up happening was the leading scientists were brought together to solve this. And so those leading scientists are from, like as I mentioned to you, actually they're from Winnipeg and San Diego. Those are the two leading researchers in the space of diabetic peripheral neuropathy. And somewhat by serendipity, somewhat by luck, and this is actually the science, they discovered that if you antagonize what's called this receptor, muscarinic receptor, it actually seems to activate nerve growth. And so there's a lot of talk about mitochondrial reactivation. So mitochondria, that's the powerhouse of the body. And so the nerves use quite a bit of energy, the nerve endings especially, to go ahead and grow. And they grow 1 to 2 millimeters per day naturally, normally. And for whatever reason, as I mentioned to you, these different diseases, diabetes, chemo, HIV, they cause damage to the mitochondria. They slow it down or they go ahead and stop it altogether. Chemotherapy causes a lot of mitochondrial damage. And so what we seem to have discovered is actually a way to reactivate the mitochondria. And actually also what we've recently found is actually seem to cause uh, regeneration as well too. The combination of these two activities increases nerve growth. And so we discovered novel science. And again, this is also tough for us as a brand new company because who wants to invest in novel science because it's unproven. Novel also means unproven. And so again, $2.2 billion for a new drug, it's tough. And so we've struggled. But fortunately for us, we've had a lot of support from grants and through both Canadian government and the US government, as well as partnerships. And so that's really what's kept us alive. And so we had to rely on that kind of money to go ahead and prove that we actually have something. And so this was shown in animals by our scientists, but we didn't know whether it would work on humans. But there was a drug called Prenzipine, and you guys, I'm sure you guys have read about us. Prenzipine was approved back in the 1980s. And it was usually used for stomach ulcers, but it was never in a pill, but it was never actually approved as a topical. It was never shown to grow nerves back. It was tested on humans, also in children in the US, as an eye drop for a disease called myopia. And the mechanism that it worked back then was actually it tightened the muscles. And this is how it worked in the stomach and as well as the eye. It tightened the muscles. And so by tightening the muscles, it reduced ulcers, but also helped with myopia. It never really got into the blood to get into this into the blood to get to the nerve endings. And so it just the way it was created, it just wasn't very attractive for as a dermatological drug. And so we took this drug, Prenzipine, been shown 40 years of safety. Millions of people have used it approved in Europe and in Asia, and I believe also in Canada, but never in the US. And so we took that drug and made it a topical. And what we're using now for our drug in our studies. And in our studies, we actually it started in the middle of COVID. So if you guys remember COVID, it started back in late 2019 in early 2020. And in 2020 is pretty much when we started our trial as well too. And so if you remember, there was a global lockdown around March until the end of 2020, beginning of 2021 in some regions. And diabetics were told not to go ahead and leave the house because they're the most at risk. Well, our studies, unfortunately, were in diabetic patients. And so it was diabetic peripheral neuropathy. And so you can imagine how much we struggled as a company to try and keep this one study afloat. The unfortunate part is, although we finished the study itself over the next 2 years, there's very little doctor-patient interactions. As you can imagine, during that time, it was a lockdown. But we were able to measure a few things, and I'll talk about that in a second. But we only finished with 46 patients, and it was what's called the gold standard for clinical studies. It was multiple doses, it was double-blinded, placebo-controlled, which means that doctors, patients, nor the company knew what was being used for each patient. They were just given a blank bottle and told that this is what you should try. And so we had placebo patients and we had people that were on the drug, multiple doses, a lower dose and a higher dose. And so that was our first study. It was a drug being applied for 6 months. We saw very good results, and I'll talk about that in a second. The second study was to complement the study, because the doctors were not seeing the patients as much, we followed on with a second study. The unfortunate part was actually at the same time of the second wave of COVID. And so again, it was not the most ideal time to be doing a study. And this was in the US, whereas the previous one was in Canada. It's not the most ideal time to do a study, but we had to do it. And so this time we thought, well, let's shorten the period, see how people do. It was a much shorter study overall. It was about a year and a half overall rather than 2 years of the first study. And we knew that the higher dose did better than the lower dose. And so again, this was double-blinded, placebo-controlled, and we finished with 49 patients. The main thing was, again, if you do studies, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, you're always looking for safety. And so what we saw was that safety-wise, the drug itself worked very, very well. And Daryl, by the way, Daryl, Glenn, or Pam, if I go too long, please tell me. And so the only thing that we saw was mild skin irritation and again, it's a topical drug, and that was resolved by using moisturizer. So by using moisturizer, people no longer had dry skin. So our drug uses quite a bit of ethanol, alcohol, and that dries the skin out. The drug itself, the active drug, saw very little systemic side effect because very little of it got into the blood. And so here's the important part of the study itself. And so we measured 4 different areas. We measured function, biological function. I'm sorry, biology. We measured function, quality of life, and then pain. And those are the 4 endpoints. It was called what's called an exploratory study because no one has ever seen nerve regeneration. So no one really knows what to do with a drug that regenerates nerves. And so all the things that we're looking for is brand new. We don't know. And so we thought, well, you know what? Let's test everything, kitchen sink, and do as much as we can. So overall, what we saw was, as far as biology, we did skin samples. We took skin samples from the leg. We took skin samples from the leg itself where it was applied, and then skin samples from above. And then we actually also measured what's called nerve conduction. And I'm sure many of you have taken this nerve conduction. It's to measure the health of the nerve. How fast does it conduct information? And so what we saw, and so when you do a study, it's again double-blinded. You test placebo versus active, and p-value is how you determine how good a study is. And p-value determines the likelihood of it actually occurring from that cause, or null factor, or not being caused. And so anything below 0.05 is considered good. It's considered statistical, which means, so if you do math, 5%, 95% chance of it occurring from the drug, and 5% occurring from random chance. As far as nerve growth, again, this is through skin biopsies. We measure the number of nerves before and after. After 6 months, ours was 0.001, which means 99.9% likelihood of drug causing nerve growth. That's really, really good. Like, I mean, that's like, That's about as perfect as you can get. 99.9% chance of our drug growing nerves back. But our samples were really pretty small, as I mentioned to you. We had only 46 and 49 patients. And so we looked at what's called nerve conduction, measuring the speed, and that also improved significantly. Not just a little bit, but we just didn't have enough patients. You need to have really good statistics. You have to have really large numbers, especially for a study like in diabetes, because there's so many people that are affected. Again, there's 40 million people just in the US. Actually, there's 20 million people with diabetic peripheral neuropathy just in the US. So typically, to have a good statistical result, you need a lot of patients. But even with 46 patients, we saw p-values of 0.001. That's really, really, really good. So we seem to be showing, at least biologically, that our drug's doing really well. But how did it work on other parts? So when clinicians assess the disease on the patients, what's called through the modified Toronto and the Utah early neuropathy score, they were also really good, and they were 0.05, 0.06. So almost. And so actually, yes, and almost. Right. But yes, if we'd had two, three more patients, we would have been statistically significant for both of these. But both of these studies measure how a clinician assesses neuropathy, so through sensitivity, through strength, and through a number of other endpoints. But the modified Toronto also has a secondary component, whereas the Utah early neuropathy does not. The secondary component is patient assessments. So it surveys patients on how they do. And this is actually that. And so what we saw in patients is that it was interesting. The people that were on the placebo, they actually degenerated. And actually, we see this also in the nerve growth as well, too. Patients who were taking the other drug, I'm sorry, the fake drug, the false drug, the placebo, actually got worse. And the active group actually did better. And that shows you that our drug seems to be working to both prevent and reverse the disease. So the other endpoints that we looked at were called the quality of life. And so you measure a number of different endpoints, large fiber, active daily living, autonomic, and a number of other things. And again, these were really strong. We also, we saw this and we didn't, again, this is something we learned over the two studies. The first study, we didn't do this, but the second study we did, we added Fitbits to the patients. We saw patients who were walking better. They were playing golf again. They were doing XYZ. They were living their life. And what was interesting was, again, patients don't know whether they're on the active drug or the placebo. The active patients doubled their activity. And what I mean by that is the number of steps and the distance they walked. They had no clue that they were on the drug. They just were better. And that's actually really promising. Um, how to work on pain. And so the unfortunate part is pain today is measured by VAS. And so VAS is I forget what VAS stands for, but it's measuring pain daily. So if I ask you pain, today versus tomorrow, or once a week, if I said, how do you feel today versus tomorrow? It's like watching your hair grow back. If I asked you, is your hair longer today than yesterday? You would say, no, it's like the same. Then I ask you the next day, the same, the same. Well, these pain scores, these pain tests today, unfortunately, really measure acute pain. And acute pain is measuring if I take an aspirin now, 3 hours from now, I'll be fine. The unfortunate part is our drug grows nerves back. And growing nerves back means that it takes a long time. It's like regenerating your arm if you lost your arm. Like you would not notice these daily small incremental changes. It's like again, like watching your hair grow back or gaining weight, losing weight. You just don't notice those things. And then one day all of a sudden, wow, you're walking again before you were bedridden. And so we did see a 10% drop in pain, but it's not one of the things that we said, oh, that's what we started out to do. But it's interesting because our drug may be one of the first drugs, if not the only drug today, really treating chronic pain different than acute pain. And that's really exciting for us. And so what does this mean overall? So our overall takeaway is that our drug seems to be the first drug that's disease modifying. It may be the first drug that actually prevents and reverses peripheral neuropathy. How am I doing on time, Pam? Daryl, anyone else? Keep going.
You're fine.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. So now that they finished phase two, what does that mean? The unfortunate part is phase two was really small, and most big pharma companies they want you to do a big study of 300 patients because they're looking just to get acquired. And so, if we did a study that had 300 patients, we could easily get acquired. We don't. We have two small studies that were in the middle of COVID, and unfortunately, right now we're in the middle of what's called the a nuclear storm of biotech, and there's no money going around, especially for innovative new drugs. And so we've survived. For the last year and a half, the company has been sustaining. I'll just say that. And so we finished about a year ago, and we got feedback from the FDA and European FDA. And what they told us was, well, I'll talk about that in a second. Actually, I'll talk about it in a second. So we finished phase one, we finished everything here. And unfortunately, right here is when everything kind of fell apart for the company. About a year and a half ago, we ran out of money and we could not find investors. And so we couldn't start phase three. Phase three is going to cost over $100 million. Not cheap. And so we've struggled to find the money to continue. Actually, and for most companies, I mean, it was, I mean, this biotech industry has taken a huge drop. It was about, at one point, the market dropped 86%. Record bankruptcies, record layoffs in the industry in the last 30 years, record lack of investments. And so for all intents and purposes, we should have died and we should have given up on the story. But I kept getting emails and words of encouragement from patients like yourselves, and it kept me alive. And unfortunately, I had to let everyone go, but I kept the story going, and it looks like now that we're gonna continue. We finally found the funding to continue for phase three. So phase three is where we get the drug approved. The unfortunate part is the Europe gave us very clear guidance on how to go proceed of all the different endpoints they want to look at. They said, look, these are all great endpoints that you have, biology, function. The only thing we care about is how patients feel. And it's part of the legacy of the pain industry. That's kind of what they've left us with, pain, pain, pain. But fortunately, EMA, which is different than the US FDA, they said, look, we also believe that the patients, how they feel overall, strength, numbness, tingling, those are all important points as well too. So let's look at those and let's continue. And so they've given us the go ahead to go ahead. They've given us the go ahead to start the trial in Europe. And so right now, we've identified a partner who said that they're willing to go and this, pay for the drug approval in Europe. And so we're going to go ahead and be opportunistic. And so we're going to run a trial of 350 patients, and it's being the drug's going to be applied for 6 months. And the goal is to try and get the drug approved by 2028. The US will probably take longer, and it's unfortunate. The US, as I mentioned to you, Prenzipine was never previously approved, so we have to do two trials. So this is the first trial, and this is the second trial. The US FDA has also not been the most accommodating. But the great part is actually it's interesting. It's changing. The US FDA, I'm sure you've heard, is under new leadership, and they're trying to change how they view drugs. Um, Whether you like RFK or don't like RFK, RFK Jr., he's making changes, and so those changes, I believe, are better aligned with what our goals are. So we'll see. The unfortunate part is that he also laid off 3,500 FDA employees. So I'm not sure what that's going to do to the FDA as far as speed. But at least as far as philosophy, they seem to be better aligned with what we're trying to do. In the meantime, you know, patients don't want to wait. And so what are we trying to do? We're going to try and get our drug approved through the U.S. Compassionate Use Program. And so we've been saying this for a long time. The U.S. Compassionate Use Program is something that we're hoping to start by the end of this year, probably the next few months. We now appear to have the funding not only for this, as I mentioned to you, but also for this. And so this part of it, we will have the funding hopefully in the next few months. We tried to raise this money through patients. Again, supposedly there's 40 million people with neuropathy in the US. Our math was we need about $200,000 to start this program. This should be easy. $200,000, everyone just donates $1. It's been a year almost, and I think we barely just crossed over $30,000. And so and this is the part where I'm not quite sure if there really is 40 million people with neuropathy, because for whatever reason, we're not seeing it. And it's been a real struggle. And so the last slide is actually this, is exactly what we need. I've talked about how there's a lack of understanding, and comprehension of the disease. So we need all of you to talk about neuropathy. Talk about it with your family. Similar to cancer awareness. Everyone talks about cancer awareness and everyone knows about it. Today, peripheral neuropathy, no one knows anything about it. Again, it's supposedly 8% of the population, nearly a billion people. You can't turn around anywhere, without actually knowing someone with peripheral neuropathy. And yet, for whatever reason, doctors aren't aware of it, patients aren't aware, the public isn't aware of it. So we need people to actually go and talk about it as much as they can, create awareness, and help us create awareness. So one of the things that we're going to do, I think, is we're and Gabriel's on the phone with me, and he's my colleague. We're going to create a site, a place on our site where we want people to provide their testimonials. And so we're going to go ahead and have everyone tell the story, because I think that when we tell people the story of our patients, your story, people go, "Wow, that's amazing! I did not know that there was this debilitating, horrific, torturous disease that affects so many different people." And I was just talking this with one of the panel with one of the organizers. I get suicide notes all the time, and it's so surprising to people that it's only tingling. It's only a bit of numbness. It's not that bad. What people don't realize is I have patients who are bedridden for 23 hours and they can't get out of bed because they're in so much pain, they're in so much numbness. And again, pain is only 20% of the population. The other 80%, the numbness, the tingling, it's horrible. And people don't understand how horrible, like, again, the mortality rate is as high, if not higher than cancer. We need you guys to talk about that. We need people with our compassionate use program. We're going to start this program pretty soon, and it's going to be in the US first, and we need 2,000 people. For whatever reason, it took me 6 months to try and get 100 people signed up. And again, 40 million people, you would think this would be a snap, and I'd get 2,000 people easily. We don't, and I still don't. So go to the site, help us, and we think we have the funding for it. But it's always good to have support from you, who are our customers and our supporters. Um, we're trying to learn better the disease, peripheral neuropathy. And what we're noticing, as I mentioned to you, is that diabetic peripheral neuropathy is very different than chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy, which is very different than COVID-induced neuropathy, which is different than other forms of neuropathy. And so help us by filling out the survey on our website and telling everyone else to fill out the survey. Because again, I need more data. And the best way for us to have more data is as with your support. Bring your doctors. We are trying to create a network of clinicians. Again, and I get this phone call all the time. Do you know any doctors? And unfortunately, I don't. And so we need more doctors involved with what we're doing. And the last thing is, you know, you would be surprised how horrible we've had it the last 2 years. The FDA said to us, literally, we don't know what to do with you because we've never seen a drug that changes shown nerve regeneration. Come back to us when you come back to us. They literally said, come back to us when you have a better idea. And we thought, we're not a pain company. That's what you're trying to force us into. We are regenerating nerves. So we need policy changers. And we need people to actually go and talk to their congresspeople and their local politicians and say, look, this is a horrible, horrible disease. There's so much money being spent on cancer and all these other things. We need more change. And I don't know if you know this, and this is what's interesting. As I mentioned, I'm not from the industry itself. The median price for a new drug today is over $300,000 in the US. That's the median price for a new drug, right? Um, Over 50%, actually almost 60% of all drugs sales are now in the US. And so pharma is very much focused on very, very expensive drugs for very small patient populations and not wanting to take risk. That's horrible. And so we need people to help us change that. And so anyway, these are the calls to action that I have for the people that are listening to this call. So hopefully this was somewhat entertaining and um, uh, somewhat good. Hopefully you enjoyed it and you learned something from it as well too. So
Well,
anyway,
thank you.
let's
I
go to the
think,
questions. So
yeah,
let
I
me go and
think
stop sharing.
that was a a very good presentation. We really appreciate all the information and things. And so I think that maybe having a little bit of follow up with some questions and answers, and there might even be a little more discussion about it. So let's start off with some question and answers that I have listed here from the group.
Sure.
So let's see here. So first one is, will this topical be absorbed through calluses in the feet, or will it be important for the calluses to be removed first?
So it's actually interesting. What we found was actually very little of the drug got into the skin. I'm sorry, into the blood. It actually stayed in the skin. The skin acts as a sponge. And so it absorbs a lot of the drug and actually a lot of the ethanol, which is why we use ethanol. And so we don't think you have to remove the calluses, but again, you're not applying just on the calloused area, you're applying it on the whole foot. That's what we're applying. They're actually applying it all the way to their calf, all the way down to their toes.
Okay.
Even, by the way, even though people don't even know that they're getting damaged, when you actually look at a skin sample, again, they may not feel it, but there's nerve damage. And that's actually one of the things we realize from our studies. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay. So next one is, how do we participate in the clinical trials? I had reached out and received no response.
As I mentioned to you for the last year and a half, it's really been me that's been running the company and I haven't been paid in a year and a half. I literally kept this company afloat because I felt an obligation to my patient to you guys. I apologize about that. But we look like now that we have a response. We have a partner who's going to provide the funding for this, and so that should change pretty soon. And again, I saw that there's another question about reaching out to your neurologist. You know, it's been me reaching out to these people, and you know, it's been tough.
Mhm.
We will do a better job.
So Glenn, I think Glenn wants to respond to one of the responses that someone brought up. Glenn, did you have, or is he on?
No, no, I'm on, but I'm okay. I'm just trying to monitor the Q&A
Oh,
and the
okay,
chat
okay. Then I'll
simultaneously.
just, I thought that was said, but I will go on with this and then you can
Yeah.
comment on what you wanted to, if you wanted to. So when available, can we make our own in the meantime, off-label, and does America have a program called Fast Track Comsoneta?
That was Korean. He was saying,
Oh,
"Thank you."
okay.
Thank you. I get it. I get it. Give me a second. Uh, so right now, obviously, we don't want you making your own because, well, one reason was because Prenzipine, the drug that we use, is actually not the Prenzipine that was used in the drugs from the 1980s. It's slightly different. It doesn't absorb as well. It doesn't work as well. People have been trying to buy the drug from what we've been told from Japan and a bunch of other places. I think that stopped, but but they had to take so much. I mean, we were hearing from people that they were taking 60 pills per day to try and get some effect. And that's not safe. We don't want that. We want safe. And so our drug appears to be, and we're not trying, again, I'm not telling you to, oh, you know, try and make more money from all this. It's just because of safety and other reasons. We want to make sure it is something that people use correctly. Um, so today, it's hard to make your own. It's not the same. It's not the same drug. And also, I can't promote that because as a company, I lose my patents if I promote that. So, and 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 I think I've said this on the record several times, numerous times, not just to hear. We want to try and make our drug affordable so people can use the drug. Again, the median price for a new drug, the median is over $300,000 in the US. And so we're trying to make this in the hundreds of dollars for patients here in globally. Um, and that's to allow us to go ahead and do further research, develop other drugs, because peripheral neuropathy isn't just in the skin; it actually is in other organs, the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, and so the eyes. And so we want to start doing research, and for that we need money. And our heart's in the right place, but again, as a company, we need to survive. And so I can't promote giving away for free, but at the same time, we want to try and make it as responsible and affordable for patients as possible. Today, we can't. Uh, you can't really make it yourself. We do have a study. If you're really desperate, reach out to me. We can provide you with another drug that we also tested. It's not the safest drug, but it is widely used called oxybutynin. Um, we did do a study with that drug. It hits the same class, same science. But again, over long term, we can't promote the use of it because there's been associated long-term damage.
Mm.
Um, and then
So the next one is, my roommate, Bro, and I all have PN. How much
yeah.
per month will the compassionate use cost be?
So we can in the US, we are for the compassionate use program, we're only allowed to recover what our direct costs are. We can't even recover money for research and all this other stuff. We can only recover what the drug costs us today. And that cost today is unfortunately about $200 per month. $200-300, I think is kind of what we per bottle. It's a 6 months you have to apply for. Um, we're trying to get more money. If we had, if this GoFundMe had been so successful that we'd gotten more money, we would have reduced that cost. But the unfortunate part is in the last year, I don't know why, again, we we've succeeded in only 50 in getting 15% of what our lowest goal was. We didn't even meet our goal. And again, I don't know why. I don't know if, again, I think part of it is please help us talk to people. Um,
Well, I
uh,
think this might help some. So anyway, the next one though is it says, what about the Canadian approval and or compassionate use status?
So actually, it's interesting. So let me go back to the slides and
Okay.
let me get the slide again. Um, Call to action. If you see here, Canadian conditional approval. So in the next 18 months, Canada has a program called conditional approval, and it's called NOC-C. And so it allows us to actually go ahead and get the drug approved in Canada. So we're working on it. We are doing, as a company, with very little resources. When I say limited, I mean, like almost nothing. Although that's changing again. Uh, we are trying to do everything we can to try and get the drug to patients as quickly as possible. And so the compassionate use program, both in the US and in Europe, and then also the NOC program in different countries, including Canada. We hope to get the drug approved in Canada in the next 18 months. A lot of it depends on how the Health Canada perceives us. And this is actually also a call to action, as you saw. We're going to create a patient advocacy group, and we're going to have patients reach out to the Health Canada and say, reach out to Health Canada and say, look, this is such a huge problem. We need this yesterday. This drug's 40 years old. It's safe. You have to get this approved. So, and again, we have not seen significant or even minor safety concerns. The only thing we saw was dry skin, and so um, um, and so hopefully Canada will allow us to get conditional approval for this. So next question.
Okay. So the next one is, are any neurodocs at John Hopkins part of your network?
They are. So I met Hoke. He's is part of our network. And the fortunate part is our company is as I mentioned to you, is arguably the leading scientists brought together to solve this. There is no ego in this. It is really about solving this problem. And so I've been very fortunate to work with the best throughout the world, not just in the US. So Canada, all throughout these different doctors, all these different regions, we've been working with them. But if you have a doctor that you think would love to hear from us, again, I apologize. I saw that some other girls, I've tried and you guys are silent and I apologize. Do it again. We're starting up again. And Gabe and I think Mark and a few other people on the phone call with me today, we're going to go ahead and try to answer as many of these things as we can. So we will create this network again. So,
And so the next one is, and it relates to what you just said, I think, where can neurologists go, read, contact to review your information? Where
so my,
are your test results published that they can review?
So we are about to publish our results phase two, the first study that we showed you, phase two results. And that should be published in what's called eBiomedicine. It's the online version of Lancet. And that should come out in the next couple months, maybe in the next month as well too, maybe in the next month. And so they can find it out on our website. And so if they email me, skim, so like skim milk, skim at winsantor.com or info at winsantor.com, WINSANTOR, again, Winnipeg, San Diego, Toronto. Uh, uh, they can, we'll respond to them and add them to our list of people. And at some point, again, this is a call to action. We're going to create a newsletter and we're going to say, hey, our paper just came out. Send this to your doctors, right? You can't advertise this stuff. We're not advertising. We're just trying to create more awareness. But this is what we're seeing. We're seeing definite nerve growth.
Okay. So the next one is, how do you, I guess, as a patient,
Yeah, as a
applying for
patient.
U.S.
So,
compassionate
so,
use
so we
program?
actually have a newsletter. It's on our website, and so if you've already registered, we have you. Don't again, I apologize. I didn't respond back to you. It's been a struggle to just keep alive myself, right?
Oh, just go
Uh,
to your website and
just go to our
register.
website, and so, but we're going to go ahead and reply to everyone pretty soon of where we are with the U.S. Compassionate Use Program. And we
Okay.
believe what's going to happen is right now we estimate it's going to be about $2,000 for a 6 month supply. Again, that's our cost. That's our cost, and we have enough. We have quite a number of bottles. So if you're interested, submit, and then what we have to do is we have to submit that to the FDA. The FDA has given us the first go ahead, say yes, do this, but they have the final say.
Okay, so the next part of this relates to this is, did I understand from your chart that there are only going to be a few thousand spots available for U.S. compassionate
We
program?
only have a couple hundred, so we
Oh,
have
a couple
plenty of room.
hundred.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, so just, don't worry about it. We
Okay.
have plenty of room for whatever reason. I don't know why people are not registering. So register. So,
Okay.
and it gives me, and the other part of this, we did this because for two reasons. One is to help patients. The other part is to kind of show investors, see, there is a big market, and look how many people have registered. It's taken me a year almost to get to 200 people.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
been really, I mean, how do I prove to investors that this is a big market when I only get 15% of what I was seeking for, and only a couple hundred people, I mean, actually, for a while, only 100 people have registered. So, I mean, if I was an investor, I'd be like, there's no market. This is not a real market. I don't believe you. And this
Mm.
is kind of what they've been telling me, that this is not a real market. And so I'm begging you, listeners, please prove them wrong. It's been tough trying to do it myself.
So what about the hands and fingers for treatment and application?
So this was interesting. And so um, we saw in the patient survey, there are a number of questions. There are six. And so we saw, as far as weakness, we saw huge difference. So like, weakness, and 85% difference between placebo and active. We saw a very strong change in numbness. People actually starting to feel tingling, which is kind of weird, right? They actually have more sensation, more pain. Uh, One of the things that did improve, and this was not by again, this is a drug that was being applied on the feet, but to get to the feet, you have to apply the hands. And so that changed also significantly. And we were surprised. We weren't expecting that, but then of course it made sense that when you apply to your feet, you have to use your hands.
Yeah. So the next question is one that you probably have heard a couple.
Info at
How do you get a hold of
winsantor.com.
you, or how do you get involved? How do we get
Uh,
involved?
I have someone that's actually helping us, info at winsantor.com, and we will respond to you.
Okay. Next one is a couple of people. Oh no, we already. I think a couple people in the chat were asking about how to donate,
Go to GoFundMe.
and that
And
was on one of your slides.
yes, so let me go back to that slide. Actually, share. Actually, I'll go to the call to action. So so it's GoFundMe A7C2DB89.
Okay.
So as I mentioned to you, I started my career as a lawyer and then started a couple companies which were sold to Qualcomm and Apple. Face ID was my company. You're seeing this huge growth in the AI world. I should be in that world. I'm not. I'm committed to this. And so this is my calling. And so, as much as you guys are affected, I'm in. So
Okay. The next question is: are we identifying some VIPs, actors, etc., that might be spokespersons,
we're
uh, for your,
we're
condition,
talking to them right now. We're talking to them right
Eric
now.
Clapton, and so on?
Yep, we're talking to them right now. We're trying to get Eric Clapton, Selena Gomez, and a few other people.
Good.
If you have connections, please, it's always best to have multiple people to talk to them. We're not trying to, it's not just a normal drug company. We're trying to change how drugs are delivered. So
Mhm. Okay. Next question is: how long before the compassionate use program is launched in the U.S.?
we hope in the next few months. And so once we close this licensing deal, which hopefully should happen in the next month, we should have funding to start phase three. And with phase three, we will start this compassion use program. So in the next hopefully in the next 3 to 6 months. We've already started the process. We've already got understand how we've actually created that process of getting this program up and running. We just need the funding to do it.
Okay. So once it's approved, you have the funding, when would it be available for purchase?
Again, it depends on the country. So
Hmm.
the compassionate use program will allow us to go ahead and provide the drug under the compassionate use program in the US. We'll probably be making more drug, more than the two. By the way, so people say there's only 2,000. We're trying to make more drug, and that costs millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. And so part of the funding that we're receiving is to go and create more drug for compassionate use in the US and Europe. Separately from that, in Canada, we're trying to get this what's called conditional approval. And conditional approval means that the drug is available for sale. It just regulatory wise, they're just going to observe us better and make sure that it's safe, there's no problems, but it is approved in Canada.
And
Hopefully in
next,
the next 18 months.
oh, okay, good. So the next one is, where is the link for the survey that you were asking about?
If you go to our website, just www.winsantor.com, WINSANTOR.com, you should see quickly where the survey is. If not, you can email me and we'll send you the link. We're about to redo our website, and redoing our website should make it a lot easier to get access to these different things that you're asking for. And then the second part is, and we're gonna do this. We're gonna create. Well, this is my goal. What I want, and Gabe and other people are helping me do this. I want 30-second videos or 1 minute videos of patients talking about their disease. People do not know how horrible this disease is. Like, I hear these stories of each one of you. I take your calls. I get your emails. And yes, I don't always respond. I'm sorry about that. I apologize. But when I hear your stories, it's very, very compelling. And I think other people need to hear it as well too. And so I'd love for us to create a site where I can post these videos anonymously, but it's with your face, or just a couple pictures saying, this is what I live with. This is how horrible my disease is. I don't think people realize it's a silent disease, as many of you know. And many of you guys are in agony and being tortured. And I get a lot of suicide notes. It's horrible. How do we get other people to acknowledge that?
So the next question is, if Canada is approved for in the next 18 months, will idiopathic patients like myself have access, or will it be reserved for diabetes, AIDS, and chemo patients?
Yes. So our goal is to try and get to as many patients as possible. And so a lot of it is waiting for the FDA to go ahead and provide us that yes or no. So we don't have the final say. It's the FDA, but we're working on that to try and get for other diseases.
Oh, okay.
And by the way, we are seeing some phenomenal results in some of these other in chemo, HIV, and those papers should publish pretty soon as well too. So
Okay.
it works. Again, it doesn't really work on the underlying disease, doesn't work on diabetes, doesn't work on chemo. It works on nerve regeneration. And the way it does that is actually through mitochondrial reactivation. It floods the system full of energy so the nerves can grow. And so it's very ubiquitous or non-specific as far as the mechanism of neuroregeneration.
Okay. I said, next one is, I can give you my neurologist name that has tried to contact you.
I apologize. And so it's skim, SKIM at winsantor.com, and I will get back to them.
Okay, thank you. So how can you confirm that we are registered?
We'll be sending out I again we'll be replying to everyone pretty soon. So I apologize about that.
Okay.
But if you registered, uh more than likely you have registered. Our system is pretty good. It's just me that's not so good.
Okay. It says, can you, well, we'll have to get the GoFundMe link in a variety of different locations that would help. And
It's right
so
here.
get it, I guess Glenn's going to probably get it into the chat for us.
That'd be great.
And then the next one is, let's see, last one that I have listed so far, maybe not the last one, but nope. Okay, what about TikTok campaign?
We tried Instagram, we've tried TikTok. This is actually one of the things that we want to do is 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 to create these videos so that we can actually post it on TikTok and Instagram so that people are more aware. We're I think I'm hip enough to go ahead and realize that that's the future of marketing. Um, I just need more ways to get more people aware of what we're doing. So.
Last one I have on my list is, let's see here, physical therapists would also be a great resource to try to get involved because they deal with it on a regular basis and a lot of their time. Yeah.
Patients are the best. So I need all of you to reach out to as many people as you can.
Okay.
Again, this is one of these where if you'd all reach out to 10 people and just talk about it and get more people aware of it, that increases the awareness. The organizers and I were talking prior to this. It's the game has changed. The game has changed of social media has changed everything. We need you guys. You guys are our social media. You guys are our value. So we need you guys to talk to as many people as possible. There's no reason why 70% of all money and transactions goes to cancer. And I don't know if you know this, the average extension of cancer drugs is months, not years, months. It's like four, I forget exactly how many days. 2.5 months is in the last 20 years, that's how much longer cancer drugs have improved. 2.5 years or 2.5 months. We're regenerating nerves. That's crazy. I need your help.
Okay, I think that's all the questions, and we really want to express our gratitude for the presentation and your enthusiasm and dedication to helping those of us who suffer, and you're right, all the time from really crazy and bizarre symptoms. And
Yes.
sometimes we don't even realize we have them until it's like overwhelming.
Oh, I mean, I can't market it too much, but like what we're seeing in patients is, I mean, I've got patients who are bedridden that are I get pictures from mountains of them climbing. I mean, it's been a phenomenal story, and I feel blessed to be working on this, and I appreciate everything that you guys are doing. So, but help me in creating the survey. I need to know as much about the disease as possible, and then two, obviously all the other things that we mentioned as well too. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think that'll end for today's webinar. And again, thank you again. And so all the attendees, thank you for attending and thank you for your questions.
All right, thank you
Have
very
a
much. Have a nice
wonderful
day. Bye bye.
afternoon or an
You
evening.
too. Thank you.